I think it's fair to say that social networking, when it comes to K through 12 education in the U.S., has not been a very popular idea. Although there are some valid objections to using educational social networks, I want to talk about some of the more promising practices that I've encountered in my own reading, in the research, and in my own practice as a classroom teacher. If you look at the steady growth of students who are composing in online educational social networks, it seems pretty clear to me that pretty soon all of our students are going to be composing in these spaces. And for a long time we've known that composing online has a lot of benefits. Way back in 1990, some researchers found that students feel like online discussions are more equitable and more democratic than traditional classroom discourse. And they also find that the asynchronous nature of things allows them the possibility for more reflection. If our students are going to be online, then it seems to me we need to think about what are the qualities of good online conversation. And I think of it as another genre. We think of poetry and fiction and nonfiction as genre. Well, I think that comment is genre. And the same rules that work in good conversations also dictate the genre of online commenting. In my own class, I tell my students that they need to be specific when they talk to another person, when they respond to another's piece of writing online, and give specific reasons why, oftentimes by citing the writer's words specifically and putting them in quotes. So I tell them to directly quote from discussion posts when they are commenting on them. And I think that's the equivalent to "I hear what you're saying" kinds of things in face-to-face conversations. We also, in good conversations, make connections to something that we've experienced, observed, or read. And in the end of all good conversations, there's an end with an invitation for further conversations. In an entry toward reflective blog talk on his blog of proximal development, Konrad Glogowski says that when we talk about blogging, most of us focus on the writing. We tend to ignore the fact that a class blogging community provides teachers with a very valuable opportunity to use informal instructional conversations to engage our students as thinkers and writers. These conversations can help our students immerse themselves in the rich tapestries of voices that characterize blogging communities. So, how do we get that rich tapestry of voices into our own teaching? In Society Online, Howard and Jones make the distinction between networks that bond and those that bridge. And I think what we want to do is try to get our students involved in networks that bridge communities. There was a On the Media segment where Brooke Gladstone talked about the internet as our own personal echo chamber, or the internet as a place where we engineer serendipity. That's where we consciously seek out people of different cultures and viewpoints and languages. And so a lot of times it seems like we talk about this global economy that needs innovation and we need to reinvent our schools and all that. But it seems to me an easy way to do that would be to have our students engage in these educational social networks that take them outside of their physical community, way outside their physical community, connecting with people of other cultures and different languages. When the topic of students working in online educational social networks come up, a lot of teachers have problems with that. There's so much demands on people's curriculum already. You've got to cover the required material. There's the time you have to spend on scripted curriculum and teaching to the test. So it seems like there's just no time left to do this kind of thing. However, I would say that this connective kind of thinking that takes place in these online environments is actually essential for student growth. In his book, 5 Minds for the Future, Howard Gardner describes the synthesizing mind like this, that we're inundated with information, but it's largely undigested and unevaluated. So the synthesizing mind says, what should I pay attention to? What should I ignore? How do I put it all together? What methods and strategies do I use so it all makes sense to me? And so Synthesis seems to be a skill that's stressed in many different places. You see it in bestsellers like Guns, Germs, and Steel. It's on the AP exam, in the DBQ sections, and on the synthesis essay. It's an essential part of the IB's culminating extended essay. And so to me it seems like synthesis is something that has to take place, but I think it's naturally takes place in this connective environment that we see online. We've been spending a lot of money on educational technology in the U.S., and it's usually tied to these economic imperatives, like our kids need to succeed in a global economy, so we need to keep them well equipped with technology. But there are some who say that that has not really led to a lot of verifiable investments, if you want to use that economic metaphor again. In the book, Oversold and Underused, Larry Cuban concludes that until we return to a more historic civic and social mission of schooling in America, school-based technology won't yield these rewards that are often cited as the justification for these huge expenditures. What kinds of things do we need to do to prepare students for this economy that's coming up, and how can educational social networks help us do that? Or one thing I think about is how technology has saved schools money. So like Google and their apps suite for schools has helped lower IT costs. But I don't think technology is going to save money in general like it does when you think about outsourcing in business, because education is different. It's more of a human business. If you look at a growing trend, you're starting to see people tutor online. And so we see, especially students in India and Pakistan, actually tutoring U.S. students in subjects like math. So it's clear that there's going to be a need for people who can effectively teach online. I think of the book Wikinomics and the story of Goldcorp, that Canadian gold mining company that essentially just opened up all their proprietary information to everyone, and suddenly their company grew by leaps and bounds. And that's in this book Wikinomics, and I think of wiki schools as a similar kind of concept. The idea of crowdsourcing, with the crowds being our students. If we can bring them into the disciplines, using another one of Gardner's terms, developing the discipline mind, if we can develop the discipline mind in these students so that they can become teachers to other people, then I think that's a realistic job that we can anticipate in the future, that of knowledge experts. So what are we doing to help our students become these knowledge experts? I think in my own situation, a lot of the good writing that's taken place has been inquiry-based. So I let students sometimes, a lot of times, choose their own topic. Those questions actually lead to pretty important topics, and my students wind up writing a lot about their passions that are related to their schooling. So the students who are interested in psychology do a lot of research and writing around psychology. The students who are interested in the sciences wind up writing inquiries about their interests in science. And I think when we write about our inquiries and our passions in educational social networks that are open to a wider community of people, those students then will synthesize various different disciplines, and that becomes the stuff of their online writing. Becomes richer because they're in wider communities of learning. And if we do all those things, if we have students write about their interests in larger communities of writers, where they understand the rules of conversation and how comments can be a genre unto themselves, if we have them develop the skills they need to be synthesizers and disciplined-minded people, then I think we're preparing them pretty well for the 21st century.